Morning, everyone, and thank you for joining. My name is Ibrahim, and I'm the product specialist here at CMS. Joining me today is our vendor manager, Chris, and our BDM, Max. We'll be spending the next 20 minutes or so talking to you about how you can accelerate application development and delivery using the OpenShift container platform. Next slide, please. Our agenda today, so we'll be starting off with an introduction. Who are Red Hat? Challenges and objectives. What are containers? Container orchestration. How OpenShift can help your business. And finally, we'll open up for any questions you may have. Next slide. Thank you. This is our third of a series of 4 20-minute webinars. Our first one went over how and why you should become a Red Hat partner. Our second one was about RHEL, which is Red Hat Enterprise Linux, and any opportunities which would arise maybe sometime in mid-2024. And that could be the ELS period for RHEL version 6 coming to an end on 30th of June. Of course, today is our third, focused on OpenShift, and in a few weeks we'll have our fourth, which will be around the hot topic that is Ansible automation. I'd just like to point out that the first two have already been recorded and can be viewed on our channel at your own time. Next slide, please. So Red Hat Enterprise Linux is the bread and butter for Red Hat. Of the paid Linux market, Red Hat have an 80% share, which is up 10% since 2019. So essentially, we could say that they have a controlling interest within this market. It can be positioned in 3 ways: enterprise, mid-market, and SMB, which is small, medium businesses. And I know the opportunities around enterprise are worked on a lot, but there is a scope for big growth in the SMB market. The 2 other products on top of Red Hat's list are OpenShift and Ansible. Thank you. Max?
Yes, brilliant. Thank you very much, Ibrahim. Appreciate that. So I think good enough place to start here is the kind of the challenges and objectives that, at least in Red Hat's view, you can meet and achieve with OpenShift. So great place to start. So, new services and capabilities, in this case via software applications, these are kind of what make businesses turn, right? Also, as well as their people. The services they bring to market are what will make them a success, what will generate revenue, bring in customers and retain customers. They also have to improve and expand existing services through modernization, right? Like in this case, of legacy applications. Spending on innovation, right? Spending on these services and these applications. This is probably regarded as the best value, right? But it's not actually necessarily where most of the money gets spent all the time. Keeping the lights on, as we say, so infrastructure, capex on tooling and licensing, and training new employees through turnover and rotation of employees. If we're able to spend the lion's share on innovation, in theory, get customers and business, you get ahead of the market, you beat the competition because you're bringing new services to market, and they're good, right? Now that they're good depends on a few things. So critically, businesses want to make sure that their new applications are secure. Okay, it's really important. They want flexibility. So in this case, we're talking about specifically where you deploy your services, where you deploy your applications, right? Is it on-prem, on bare metal, sorry, on VMs? Is it in a public cloud? Are you building out a private cloud? Is it a hybrid cloud scenario where you're trying to deploy your services across multiple substrates and still achieve a good consistent experience? And finally, scale is obviously a massive issue here. If you can develop successfully secure and valuable new services and applications, deploying them wherever you like, brilliant. But if you can't then scale to meet your business demands, you're not gonna have success. You're not gonna grow your business. Okay, so back to basics a little bit here. There's a few bits of technology that underpin OpenShift and that are key, I suppose, to those those challenges around software application development and modernization. So containers, they're not new, but it always feels like they're a hot topic. Probably fair to say that while they're not new, they are new to some people and to some organizations, right, where they are in their adoption curve. So what are they? They're containers in this case are just a method of packaging applications. They're a Linux technology originally. Two important features of the Linux kernel kind of underpin what containers are, which are namespaces and control groups, themselves determining what a containerized application can access, who it can talk to, what other services can talk to, and what resources can be used by the application in the container. So it's not necessarily critical to know this, but I think it's good because this is based on Linux, so no wonder Red Hat are right in the mix here. What's good about containers? Plenty of things I'm sure a lot of people would say, but I think some to point out here. They're very lightweight, right? So they contain, no pun, just what's required. Binaries and libraries required for the application itself that's being containerized, as opposed to with a virtual machine, which would contain everything at a full operating system and all the binaries and libraries that would come with that. So they're far more lightweight, meaning they can be more performant, right? They're less costly. They're ephemeral, so they spin up and spin down as required, right? You're not leaving VMs running over the weekend or for weeks at a time, running one application, which is therefore costly and clunky. And we talked about flexibility already. Containers are flexible. What they use that's quite interesting, something called a declarative architecture. All that means is the instructions around how a containerized application should be deployed and interact with its environment are in the container image, right? So when a container is written for an application, there are instructions in there that just mean that it's kind of ready for whatever comes. So it's flexible in that regard, because then if you're going to deploy it on AWS or locally or on Azure, you're going to get the same experience because the instructions therein are already telling the container how it needs to behave. So that's the flexibility side. And then this shipping analogy I'll touch on really briefly. This gets brought up quite a lot, and to be fair, I don't know that I liked it in the first instance, but it is quite a good straightforward analogy. So in the past, maybe transporting goods, you might have needed to know the specific requirements for transporting the goods that you've got on there. So think of anything like I'm picturing an old wooden ship, but point is it could have animals, livestock, food, I don't know, clothes, heavy goods, metal, whatever, right? There's all sorts of things that can go wrong there, quite a lot of variables, and you might need to spend a lot of time thinking about how you stack them, how you fit them on the ship, and then maybe even modify the ship to sort of work for all these varied things that you're transporting. Conversely, in modern day, we put things into shipping containers and stack them nicely, as you can see in the image there. Crane hoists them on and off. They sit uniformly and slot in and whatnot. And the ship crew don't need like deep expertise on the contents. On the contents of every container, and they don't need to be experts. They don't need to necessarily know what's in every container, nor know how to deal with what's in there if they did know, right? So it kind of that mimics a little the management of applications at scale in containers, because the system doesn't necessarily need to know what's in there. The declarative architecture means that the containerized applications already know what they need to know prior to being deployed. So it's it's an analogy you'll see come up. Okay. So another little piece of illustration, which won't dwell on too long. On the left, you can see a more traditional stack that you might be familiar with, like a bit of sort of normal virtualization, right? So you've got your virtualized applications, all the binaries and libraries they'd require to run, and then a whole guest operating system sitting there running for them to exist. They then sit on top of the hypervisor, which comes with all the overheads and latency it generates, the extra sort of cost on the hardware of having a hypervisor running, host operating system, and then the hardware beneath. Now on the right, you've got a situation where no VMs, no hypervisor, so no overheads and performance costs and all the stuff that come with virtualization. You've just got the apps sat in their containers with only the binaries and libraries and whatnot that they need to run. Then the container runtime, which again we mentioned, this is essentially a feature of the Linux kernel. So that's also very lightweight and is coming with the host operating system, which would be a flavor of Linux in this case, sat atop the hardware. So more performant, more lightweight, right? Less onus on the operator to understand, excuse me, the requirements, but also it's just overall more efficient deployment, I suppose. And then very quickly, so you'd probably be familiar with Docker. Certainly set the stage in the last 10 years. And then CoreOS may or may not be familiar with another container runtime technology that was actually acquired by Red Hat. And so now, if you have heard of it, you might have heard of it as RHCOS, Red Hat CoreOS. Okay, sorry, I've jumped ahead. The one thing you may recognize or may not, the symbol there in the top is a symbol for Kubernetes. So seeing on what's Kubernetes. Kubernetes originally was and remains, to be fair, an open source project, but it was started by Google in 2014. It's not Google today. They did hand that over to the Cloud Native Compute Foundation, but it continues as an open source project underpinning everything that's done on top by all the other flavors of Kubernetes that we'll come on to. Important thing here is, as we've spoken about in previous, I think in the previous webinar, you know, community-driven innovation, pushing forward the capabilities and of open source projects is what makes the, it's the lifeblood of open source, right? And so that's still the case with Kubernetes today. We'll come on to where that fits into OpenShift. As I said, it's a container orchestration tool. So at very basic level, that's deploy, scale, and destroy, right? That's your ability to I don't want to say spin up because we associate it with VMs, but to deploy containers, to do that at scale, but then also to tear them down, because that point about them being ephemeral is really important. They're lightweight, they're less costly, and to be that, we need to be able to tear them down really just as well as we're able to deploy them. And then I've written XKS, so but you'll probably be familiar with I don't know, GK, so Google's current version, Google Kubernetes engine, EKS from Amazon, and then AKS from Microsoft on Azure. By no means exhaustive, right? But they're what we'd call the three biggest hyperscalers, and certainly they've got quite a good adoption of their Kubernetes flavors. But absolutely, other ISVs and public cloud providers have got their own, options around Kubernetes for customers. Okay, so we're now kind of jumping, I suppose, but where does Red Hat OpenShift come into this? Where can OpenShift help? So this is Red Hat's tagline. I think this really illustrates well what OpenShift's for. To build, deploy, and run containerized applications anywhere, right? I think it's fair to say that that's the mission for OpenShift, and it's also something that it achieves. At the core of OpenShift, of course, is Kubernetes, but that's not all there is. And this is an important point. OpenShift is not just Red Hat's flavor of Kubernetes. It's not just a container orchestration tool. It goes beyond that. I think pretty much say it's turnkey. And the reason for that is that OpenShift is more of a suite of applications, or at least a bundle of modules, if you like, that really go back to those objectives and challenges I mentioned at the start. We're not just looking to orchestrate containers at scale. We're looking to enable the building and modernization of applications at scale, right? And so to do that, there are a few other parts of OpenShift that I'm just going to talk about very quickly here. So again, I don't do exhaustive lists, just like to try and pick out the best bits, but ACS, ACM, and key are often talked about, and I think they're really important parts of OpenShift. So advanced cluster security looks after, as you can imagine, security and governance. Core part of this is analyzing container images against a security database, right? So we talked about security and how important that is. Advanced cluster management. So what does this do? Amongst other things, it enforces the state of containers across deployments. So we talk about, again, being able to do things at scale, the anywhere proposition, right? ACM allows customers to look at all their container clusters, their deployments in different geographies and different regions, and enforce when I say the state, the latest version of that container image within the business. What good is it updating and upgrading your business applications if you don't then push those updates out to all of your internal users everywhere? Doing that obviously comes with its own challenges, and this is part of what ACM achieves. And then key is serves as a container image registry and internal registry. So these are kind of tools for enabling developers within a business to do all that innovation, right? But to do it in a manner that's enterprise ready. And then something more familiar, Red Hat Enterprise Linux, and I mentioned earlier Red Hat Core OS. So everything we're talking about here is on top of RHEL and Core OS. So that famous interoperability and flexibility with RHEL, all the relationships that Red Hat have with lots of ISVs and hardware vendors, all the certification, all the collaborative efforts that go on, that kind of supports this anywhere proposition as well. And I think just underpins that, OpenShift can be, I think the anywhere proposition I'm trying to get at, OpenShift works anywhere, and it owes that largely to the strengths of Red Hat that they've built on until today. Okay, and then one more part on this. So it's kind of trying to get into the sort of reality of this for partners. So who would you want to speak to about this? Who's going to be interested in this? Well, I suppose potentially anyone, but quite good personas here. Heads of development. So they're naturally going to want to be able to leverage the latest technologies and make sure that their business's choices around software and tooling facilitate that, right? They want their developers focused on innovation, essentially, and they can be innovative and sort of stick to that if they are equipped to do so. Heads of operations, they're going to be sort of security focused. So an enterprise Kubernetes deployment, although we know that OpenShift's more than that, that is something that's going to be of interest to them. Stability and security being key to them in any platform they choose to use. And then broadly IT senior leadership. So I'm talking CIOs and heads of IT. Operational efficiency is quite important to them typically, right? And so doing at minimum what they already do today, but better without costing more, that's going to be attractive. But also mentioned before, the ability to deliver new services to the market in a timely manner, that's important here, right? Because they want to stay ahead of the competition. So they've got kind of a business view on it rather than necessarily being focused too much on the actual technology. Okay, I've talked quite a lot. Chris.
You certainly have, Max. Thank you very much. So just a little bit to wrap up on the opportunity with OpenShift. So Firstly, I mean, it can be deployed on-prem, it can be deployed on hyperconverged, such as Nutanix, it can be deployed on bare metal, it can be deployed and ran in the same state in AWS or Azure. So it's a uniform, because they're in containers, it's pretty uniform on the hardware. It's obviously OpenShift is software, so it's all sold the same as the rest of the Red Hat portfolio as a subscription model. So if an opportunity this year is X amount, then the opportunity next year will be exactly the same amount. Obviously, as part of the program, and we covered this off on another webinar. So anything new business on OpenShift is certainly applicable for what they call ORP, Opportunity Reward Program, or what you and I know as deal reg, at the various level that you are, whether you're ready, advanced, or premier. It's margin rich if you're a reseller that is applicable to the Leading With series, and you've got the accreditations for the Leading With containers, then that gives an additional discount for deal reg. If you're not, then certainly Red Hat, this is a definite growth area for Red Hat, and they will make sure that you guys in the reseller world are making substantial margins on this, and protected against the competition sort of thing if you're bringing a deal to them. So, and we can help you with the deal reg, and we can certainly help plug you in with the Red Hat sales team that can help to plug this in. So it's also very services rich. So if there's a deal of, I don't know, say 100 grand, for example, then you'd expect to get at least 150 grand revenue of services around that to get it installed, up and running, and working well. So if you guys have got your own services departments, especially if you're already trained up on that, then fantastic. If not, then we partner with a couple of companies that can certainly assist with that. We can assist you along the way. So, we certainly recommend that you do some training. So Red Hat now call them credentials. So there's a really good technical seller one for OpenShift that a few of us have done here at CMS, and a lot of the Red Hat team have done as well. So, we can certainly help to find that credential and position it. And we got, the three of us that are on the call today. Also, Ian Hall, our pre-sales technical engineer, he can obviously help support you, with anything you've got within OpenShift and containerization. So hopefully you've got something from this, you've learned something. Hopefully you can think of a couple of customers that you might want to have a conversation with. As Max pointed out, some of these people might not be the people that you speak to about infrastructure, but if you put a little bit of work in and find the right contact, then certainly applications and keeping applications running at scale is certainly keeping them up at night. You can contact either myself or my colleague Max. Our email addresses are obviously on screen. If you ping an email to red@cmsdistribution.com, then we all have access to that mailbox, and we can certainly come back and reply to you. Or obviously pick up the phone and speak to your account manager. They'll almost certainly forward your request onto Max or I, and we'll get in touch with you. So I'm going to open the floor now to any questions. But yeah, I'll look forward to working with you guys and helping you find some of these opportunities. Max, are there any questions coming to the chat?
No, it doesn't look like it at the moment.
Give it just a few seconds in case anybody wants to put something in. In which case, thank you all very much for your time. Thank you for joining. Again, I hope you learned something today. And we look forward to welcoming you onto our next webinar, which is early December, around automation with Red Hat's Ansible automation platform. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.